bit at a loss. Definitely want to give this fair consideration and where do you keep the interest most? And quite frankly, I normally default to my ethics in hard decisions. And the hard thing about this decision is I don't think ethics tell us what to do necessarily. We've had our challenges. You're a fantastic individual in many ways. I love working with you. Some ways it's become difficult, which we've discussed a little bit. Mainly just the difficulty that we find in order to manage and implement adjustments and push back there. But more so than that, even. Decision to make, because I see the capability in you, and I see the capability in our ability to all work together. I think we all have it, but I think there's too much bad blood. I think there's too much in our history that could act as a strengthening, but is apparent that it's put you and I on edge. And I hate that because I don't think it needs to be. But it is. So that's a hard decision. That's a hard thing to base a decision on. I think it leads to some of the insecurity, some of the bad blood that we've had, and us learning how to discipline and how to steer the ship. And when we've seen pushback, which I think isn't necessarily a bad quality in you, it's a difficult quality with other people that have similar qualities, and they push back. And we've had confrontation there, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing if it comes to resolution. And if we can have confrontation that comes to quick resolution, we move forward and we grow and we build. But it's become kind of a negative, I think, not only in your life. Example that you shared this morning when you and I were meeting in my office, that you fear that you'll lose your job. When I thought that was all dispelled, but the feelings I think are real, and that's to where, quite frankly, I have feelings of concern that, and maybe again not valid concerns, but the reality of how I feel is, could it come to a point where Colton or Lacey feel like they need to be compensated in such a way that for your injury that harms notched.
I want to touch on that point, like specifically, because since being injured, like with Skylar and people, like there was this air of conversation that it seemed like that's what we were looking for to some degree, where I thought that through our discussions, just how we've been growing in this last year and a half, since coming back from injury, being on leave for injury, that was the antithesis of what I wanted. That we weren't looking for that because I didn't feel there was even a need to bring it up. Like when I was in the hospital and you like told the story of the guy that got injured, I can't remember, it was like a landscaper, and just the
I think that's like a client who injured me with some metal panels.
Yeah, and like there was a lot of concern about being sued. In the time, in the time, that was just like weird to me. But it also seemed like that you were trying to curb me away from even considering it, and the thought never occurs to me. Never it occurred to me, like when I was in the hospital, and like Caroline said something to that degree as well, and I was just like, that's weird. I have a lawyer who is an aunt who's a lawyer, and she even said something along the lines of compensation, and I was just like, but they said they were going to have a place for me. We're going to figure it out because I really like this company. Like, yeah, we could sue. Like, people do that all the time. People get injured at work, and that's their free ride. I don't want a free ride, and I like this company. So that was the last thing that's ever crossed my mind. And then Skylar regularly would say something to the extent of like talking to a lawyer, or like he said that Caroline said something to him. There was a lot of gossip communication that like talking to Caroline, something Skylar said, and talking to Skylar about something Caroline said. I'm just, every single time with both of them, I was like, I don't know where people are getting this idea from, because I just want to show up to work and build some structures. I want to make some sawdust and draw some pictures. Like, I've busted my ass for companies I've given 250% only to be shat on and cast aside. And I'm just like, and there was always when I was framing, I was crushed, I was cut, I was like in the hospital often because of injury, because of the nature of the job. And it was always a freak accident, but it always resulted in, well, like, why don't you sue? Because then I don't have a job. Like, that's the reality to me is I sue, yeah, I get a fat check now, but then I don't have a job later, and that money runs out. Whereas if I have, well, they said I have a position, and I really like where we're going, because this is a fun job. Never consider it. Still don't consider it. Like, I don't see the point in destroying a small company for my own benefit, because then Ben doesn't have a job, and Reno doesn't have a job, and you don't have a house, and like, it doesn't just affect me. My injury just affects me, like, as a physical, as a psychological. Like, yeah, there's some reaches outward into the company every now and again of just like the reality of it, but the actual physical reality of who it affects is just me, and that's what I live with. That's my reality. That's fine. My opinion on my injury in the company is that it's not recognized as what it is. Jeff downplaying it, and like, so to give the example of why I felt when you were saying, like, being open about this week and not vacation and missing out on your kids' stuff, like, the reason why that comes across as disrespectful and dismissive is Jeff did it when I broke my foot and he hurt his foot. And he's like, well, I had to get back at it, and I fell too and it got injured too. It's like, yes, you did. Your foot was intact. You were able to stand and carry me after I couldn't stand for months. I couldn't get out of bed. I can't imagine my life without foot pain now. We're not in the same, it's not even comparable. Yeah, we both had a foot injury, but I cannot just get back to it. I can't do what I did before, even in a reduced capacity right now, because there's a psychosomatic effect from it. I'm working on it, I'm getting therapy, I'm growing from it. I don't have a choice. I don't get to choose anything. I don't get to put it aside or put it out of my head. I just have to deal with it. And so that's where, when there's like, well, I did this, and that's why I can dismiss what you're saying right now. It's not the same, and it goes into I'm not being heard, and that's what I have said. I don't feel like I'm being heard. There's been discussion, we get a little growth, and I feel like for the most part, we've come a long way. Like, not just me and you and the design, but like as a company, because of the struggles of my own, there is a system that has been effective that could be even more efficient as we get, like, there's very more factors than me and you, or me and fabrication. The system will be perfected. Like, I'm not worried about that because of what the growth we've gone through this year, and it breaks my heart hearing, like, when I am establishing my boundaries or discussing my opinion on something, that it's taken as pushback and not as constructive criticism, constructive dialogue, as I'm put in this position because of my experience. That's what we've said. We've talked about, like, the value of my experience in construction and having done install. But then when I say anything in those lines, that even if it's pre or post what you or Jeff have said, there's no discussion. It's, well, we've already discussed it, and this is what we're implementing. And I'm like, well, this is how it affects me. Okay, but this is what we're doing. All right, and then I do it. It's my way of understanding the decisions that are made without my consultation that benefit off of my knowledge that I have. Like, why am I in this position? As you say, because of my knowledge, because of my experience, because of what I bring to the team. But then it feels like I'm told that, but not shown that, well, when I bring something, that's pushback. You're being insubordinate and disrespectful, and like, I'm not trying to be. I don't mean to be. I'm just trying to establish a boundary in the realm of, this is my reality, and this is what I know. And so and we have grown. We've moved. Monday is moving swimmingly. Things are, the rough rocks in the tumbler are losing their edges, and it feels like oftentimes, as the rocks are being tumbled, like, if the solution is we just need new rocks. These rocks are chipping too much. And it's like, we don't give things the time to polish. And that's what I mean when I say I just want that consistency. Like a 6 month of, let's just do this one thing, let's hedgehog it, and then talk about adding things. But we have the discussion, I need 3-month quarterly reviews. That's what was the decision twice. We've had that, this is what we're gonna do. And a year had gone by without a quarterly review, after 2 discussions of having quarterly reviews. That's where that my dissociativeness comes from it. I get told something and we don't follow through. But everything else seems to be going smooth. So it's like, all right, I guess we didn't need to fix it because everything else, like the things that were the base of that issue, has been solved. Like, it's now our standard practice to, when you make a comment on Monday, you have to say the job or make sure, like, it's just those little things that it's like, it can lead to a bigger issue if it's not done, but it's a quick fix. And it's just, like, it feels like a bigger issue when it first gets addressed, because you don't, like, as I've said countless times, we don't know it's a thing until it's a thing. We don't know to address an issue before it comes up, because how can you foresee that my going out onto an install is going to mess me up mentally for a week? How can you predict that? Like, when I'm feeling capable, like, oh yeah, I feel like I want to do an install a week. That is my hope, my goal. That's what I'm shooting for. I'm doing physical therapy at home. I've been stretching. We're doing a weight class. My teacher's like, there is marked improvement in your mobility in your broken foot, that you're doing great. And I'm like, I'm trying. Like, I need to be able to be effective. But that puts me out. It's doing even that. Like, I'm foot up and elevated, ice and in ice, and then I come to work on Friday, which is nice to sit, and then I'm back in ice, just to make up for the work that I need to move, to progress, the growth that my body has to go through to make up for the atrophy of, I was doing install and killing it, and then I was in bed. I couldn't even stand up. My muscles paid for that. And it came at a cost. But a cost I was willing to pay. I wasn't willing to sue to get a fat chunk of money and move on and be done with it and then have to figure it out later. It was an accident. I'm not blaming anyone. We had, when I tell the story about how that happened, we had too many guys, too many new guys, and it was chaos. And when it happened, it was, oh no. But it was obvious. That's how most mistakes are. Like, when it happens, you don't see it happening. Looking back, well, it makes perfect sense why it happened. Let's don't do that again. So it's like, okay, I'm used to being broken for a company. You guys have done more than any other company has done in that regard, in recognizing. But you also need to recognize that you've also done harm in that regard. Telling Skylar not to give me a carpool ride, that I needed to find my own ride into work. Carpooling was, when I started and I carpooled with Jeff, I had a car at the time. But it's cheaper on gas, it's better for the environment, the more people we could carpool. If I'm on the way, it was just slight out of his way. Skylar was more than happy to do it, but I had to walk.
Well, that's what he told you. He would tell me to.
Okay, and that, like, yeah, so that's.
And he bounced back and forth, and so.
And but that's all I had to go off of. And then I brought it up to you, and I was told I just needed to make sure that I was in work on time. And so all I have is, I'm just trying.
And then there was a discussion of how can we help, what can we do, and
there was
to do what we could. So.
And I'm not casting blame. I just want, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I walked with a broken foot, and I was made to feel that my tardiness was the issue. Who cares about the effort that I was going through, the struggle that I had to do to get in? But you need to call us at 8:01 if you're going to be late. Like, what does that tell? If you had that situation, put yourself in my shoes. How would that make you feel? If you were doing that with a broken foot, there was 1.5 foot of snow before I was as into the laying in it as I was, on a broken foot, just out of the hospital, like the doctor said, okay, you can put light effort onto it, and you walk a mile to a train, and then walk a mile from the train, and, well, why are you late? Why can't you be earlier? What if you left 15 minutes earlier and caught the earlier train? How would that make you feel?
Well, I understand that would be challenging.
Would you see seen? Would you feel like the company even gave a rat's ass about you?
I can see how you would feel that way. But I can also see the other side. That's not understanding. That is dismissing. You can't say I see but. You can't say that then. So Colton, there's so many things at play that we can't just say one thing's right, one thing's wrong, one thing doesn't affect another. To say that, yeah, you were injured, Jeff did give you a ride for a significant amount of time, Skylar gave you a ride, and did probably a passing comment that maybe he didn't even really believe, that he was frustrated that he's late because of you and having to pick you up. I'm like, well, you're not obligated to do that. If that's not working, we can find other options with Colton. We can go that route, which you and I talked about. I recommended the bike as an option, and you liked that as, okay, that could work with my foot, and I said, it's snowy. Are you sure that's even a viable option? Oh, I've ridden in the snow.
I wasn't riding in the snow. I hadn't fixed my bike till it stopped snowing.
You told me, though, that you'd done it in the past.
Yeah, we discussed it.
Okay, well, that sounds like a viable option. We'll try that. It's giving him the mobility. Of according to you, and it's giving you an option that works. So yeah, if that wasn't the case, then we would have figured out another option.
But then I was reprimanded for being 5 minutes late regularly.
So
Like,
regularly 5 minutes late.
because, like, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
ignoring the issue, the factor
Yeah,
that
yeah, this is
directly
going on,
applies.
but can it not be fixed?
The
Can we
easy
not?
solution is just
Do the
allowing me
change.
a little bit of wiggle room. And then,
Now
so
we
that's
want
what.
more wiggle room because of this, and now we want.
But then I didn't get
I
any,
feel
so that's,
like-
it's not,
Yeah,
I
I don't want all
want, so
the
I don't
equity.
get that, so I accommodate, and so then I want something
I'm
else
gonna
to
hold them to
accommodate,
it.
and then I'm never accommodated.
It's
I'm
like
accommodating,
You guys owe me to give me flexibility forever.
it's not forever, but it's, I was given none.
Here's one thing.
I wasn't given an inch with a broken foot.
Yeah, you were. Flexibility is one thing,
Why did I feel like my job was constantly at threat?
and establishing the standards that help us succeed isn't against you, isn't trying to make your life harder.
I'm not saying it's to make it harder. I'm saying it's dismissing the variable that led to the cause.
Now I'm gonna be hard and force him to this, and if he doesn't, by golly, that's not what I'm sitting in my bedroom thinking about at night.
And I
trying
feel
to
like
help
that's a
you
projection.
succeed.
That
I'm
statement
trying to
was a
help
projection.
us succeed as a team, but you've actually validated my point. The fact that there's bad blood.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's
And-
bad blood because you want it to be bad blood.
I don't want it to be bad blood. The
I
fact that
want a
you're
little bit of
concerned about-
accommodation to an injury that I received here,
You want
and
accommodation
instead of that, it's
for
taken.
half hour later because of Lacey. Nothing to do with this. We haven't talked about that
It's
at all.
that I
Okay.
say Lacey as the short form, but Lacey is a variable of. It's also established from this. Again, Lacey already had an
I
established.
feel like we find any solution to make Colton's life smoother.
Except it's not about. Nobody's made my life smoother other than the fact
I'm
of.
happy to make accommodations and help, but I'm not happy to continually feel like I'm on a line.
And I've
Because
never
of
made it
all-
seem like you're on the
because
line.
this, because
I'm
that.
saying I've not been recognized for it.
And although I see that we all have the capability of succeeding, I don't see us succeeding.
I understand that.
And that's a hard realization, but I think that's the reality. And I want to do right by you, and I want to do right by Notched, and I don't know what that means. But going on pretending that we've all moved on, but then not really feeling like we've all moved on, having this kind of confrontation is counterproductive, and a fresh start may be best for everybody. As much as I dislike it. And that's okay. But so I feel like for that reason alone, we will move on. I recognize that whether I did or was a part of, I was, in some significant way, a reason for your injury, or could have prevented it had I done this or that, or could I have done this or that. And I carry a responsibility there that I recognize. And I've tried to do right by you, and I know it's been a challenging almost 2 years since. into everything I've done and lead you to believe that I'm trying to justify it. I think anything that I've done, I think you recognize, and done what I can. But and to be honest, that makes this realization all the harder because I think we could succeed. But I do believe that a fresh start, you'll be more successful and immovable too. Whatever you decide that to look like. And the design background that Gary gives you that much more. What do you feel like? Do you feel like that's... What do you think? Do you think a fresh start is...
I can't say no because it's unknown. Like, my core thing has been trying to establish a consistency in something that we've been developing. There was not a position, and it was made specific, like created because of a need that came from an injury that has been beneficial and had a lot of potential, but there was no direction to it because how can you direct something that you don't know? Like I was saying earlier, a lot of it, where you would be coming from comes from as an owner who started the company, design, fabrication, everything alone. So when you like spread out fabrication, like getting a fabrication team that doesn't need to know design or anything, but needs to understand how your design incorporates and why they hedgehog that. And then beyond, like every role that's been not Jardin since you started has had to go through that. And something as crucial as design, how do you do that? How do you do something that you learned on the fly? How do you teach somebody to then take that and go with it? And that's been the bulk of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, this is something that Lacey and I regularly say, like when they talk about statistics and stuff, and this year's mentioned, it's like you have to factor in this year because of the extreme outliers that it brought. This year, in every realm, has brought outliers that would not otherwise ever be considered in any realm, because in a normal world, none of these things could happen. There's stops to prevent it, but then there's a new normal. Nothing's set, nothing's determined, and then you're trying to make something in that same realm separate and solid in that. So the design has been very hectic, to say the least. There's been not one consistent month on the design front of what's been expected of me, of what's been needed of me, things that I was doing on January of 2020, I don't even consider. Because it was, does this work here? Does this puzzle piece fit here? No, it's not here. I was doing it because I could, but it
took quite a lot of figuring out this last year together.
Right, and but there's not been, and that's what, when we moved to, there's been talk of putting me on salary for more than a year, but there's been a reluctancy because I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how that was a change to my stability. A pay raise is a change to my stability. A bonus is a bonus, but it's a change to my stability. It's an outlying factor to something that should just be post beams, rafters, top. It is a straightforward hedgehog company. But there's a lot of little integral parts that you don't know are a thing until it's a thing. And so I've been putting myself into this company. I love this company. I love where it's going, and I love what we do. if it didn't progress anywhere and it was just what it was when I started, that would be fun. But that's not a successful business. That's just a fun hobby, and you can't grow as a person or family or as a company doing a hobby. It's hobby. But we had that potential, and then we were forced into an expedited process with outliers that, again, like, do not exist in the real world, but they existed in our real world. And that's, for me, it's like the things that I'm asking for there, I'm not asking for change. I'm not asking for those things as I'm saying them. I'm asking for them in regards to how we've already established everything, but with consideration to the other outliers, the other variables that if they didn't exist, it wouldn't be a problem. And because they do exist, they have many different solutions to, me leaving being a potential solution, but it's also change out the rocks before they're polished, because they're not polishing the way that you wanted to polish. The 7 habits, the factor of that's been a big issue for me for the last year that wasn't articulated till we did that book, was with Jeff micromanaging. He was expecting his results on something that he didn't even do, but what he had envisioned. And how do I make what I know work with what you're telling me? And that's taken as I'm pushing back, and I'm just trying to understand. Half the time, I'm just trying to understand from where I am in this chaos design. Like, if it were you in this position, you'd handle it completely different.
That's the half that I celebrated to you and publicly.
And
it's the other half that's pushed too far. Yeah.
But that's how it seems like there's been no resolution, because we're having the same conversation, and it always starts out with, I don't feel like I've been heard, because we've gone back, we established this is what we're going to do. Okay, that's what we're doing. This isn't working.
I think that's what we share in common, is you feel that way as do I.
And so from my perspective, I want to just have a routine. I love this company. I want that routine here. I wouldn't be fighting so hard if it weren't important to me. I would just say, okay, bye, peace. I don't need this. I don't need the stress that I'm getting, but I feel like I've invested in the stress. The stress I don't see as the negative. It's lifting weights. It's building muscle. It hurts. Do you just stop lifting weights? Do you just stop running? Do you just stop trying? Or do you rub some Tiger Balm on? Do you not push so hard? Do you give yourself some time to breathe and go, okay, yeah, we can be pushing harder, but it will cause a great injury if I push too hard? Or do we go, if I take a breath and give it a minute, let's just let the dust settle before we stir the pot again, before we add another, and we've had things that have been added and since removed that...
I feel like you may be referring to kind of the conversation before you had this last week of kind of mental challenging times, that I feel like you're referring to when you and I and Isabel talked about the changes to our team. Like, you want to know what's here is pretty much been the norm, minus a few adjustments, a few alterations. And to feel like you have to fight for that, well, why do you have to fight for that? Well, we talked about slight deviations to this. Other than that, there's not a lot. And that concerns me, that we have a week of lost time. We have discussion that got very personal, has gotten heated, and over what? Because you and I and Isabel met.
And see, I feel like that, again,
because we need to do a little bit of install time, which we've already talked about. All those things you brought up over there as stressors.
Because they came to a head.
We're okay with them. What got us from there to here? A lot of this. And
but I want you to know real quick the things that I'm okay with.
Yes, I'm okay with input. I'm not okay with that anymore.
But that's what I'm trying to point out. The thing that you're not okay with is we talk about the concessions and then they don't get made, and then I'm still in the same mindset and position of, we talked about making this little bit of change, and instead of doing it, I got reprimanded for the same thing plus, or slightly different, or a little bit different, that it established
you're talking, but you don't really have any examples. I don't know what you're even talking about.
Just
I'll give you an example.
A key example of designing.
That we talked about phone calls. Jeff and I are seeing the effect of not having enough phone calls. Jeff talks to you about phone calls. Phone calls aren't happening. Talks to. I'm hearing multiple times. Apparently Caroline's talked to you too. And so I'm brought into it okay, this is something that needs addressed because the phone calls aren't happening. I'm hearing that Caroline's getting calls from people. It's so hard to get a hold of. Who's his contact information go in? And so I have a very respectful conversation about process and let's make sure we do this. And you have many reasons why not to. A little bit of feedback's understood. But the fact that it took me to get involved, to push it into action, and then to get all those reasons, and then for me to have to lay down the law.
But see, and that's
a process that's
so that's exactly that touches on exactly everything that I'm kind of being vague about. But it's so the discussion of communication and Jeff and Caroline and the customer and me not communicating, even though I'm doing all these different steps or have been communicating, the blame of the miscommunication always falls back down onto me because it's an easy, when I miss one, because of a Smith great example of Jeff said he would handle that with Ryan Pitt, and my contribution is make sure he reaches back out to me. And there's things that we try to work it before, try to discuss it with Jeff, and then we get
pushing when I said let's call, tells me that you haven't been calling because you didn't want to.
No,
or you didn't like to.
See that it's not let's call, it's the initial call. It's changing of, hey, this is what I'm trying to work, and you said, yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'm still working on this. No, you need a call now, but I'm still working on this. We discussed this already. We discussed that I'm going to email. As soon as it comes into Monday, I need to send an email. And I haven't had the time to do that. But that's the thing, it's trying to make a change right after a change was established. It's that
we're growing, we're figuring it out.
It's not giving any leeway. It's needed, but it's also, it needs to understand that I can't just bend at a minute.
This works better.
Not better. This is what I'm establishing.
We're meeting is, and I said, let's just do an initial call. I don't like initial call. There's nothing to talk about. What you said. Well,
I didn't say there's nothing to talk about. I said that it was redundant at that point because of a previous conversation.
And then I explained, it's more of a relationship building. And if you're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. No, well, this has been working, and I don't think that's going to work.
I didn't say I don't think that's going to work, and I said for me.
So that tells me you haven't been doing it because it wasn't working. Because this other thing worked.
I said it's not working calling immediately. I'm like, you don't let me give you nuance. You make me, you take my one sentence, you don't let me explain the nuance to it, and you say that that's how I must be. I say it doesn't work because most of the time, because Jeff said, let me finish this talk. Jeff said I'm doing what Jeff told me to do first, and then I'm getting told to do something also. I can't even establish the thing that Jeff is telling me because it's not what you want. Or you tell me something and Jeff says, Jardin's not here, do what I say.
Isn't working. Obviously, there's
not my
fault on me. There's fault on Jeff. But this isn't working.
Okay.
So I want to move forward, and I think moving forward is parting ways. I've never done a severance package. I don't know how they're done, but I want to offer you one. One, because of our history, and two, because I think it is a fair gesture in a transitional period. What that would look like to me is you signing a letter that says you hold us harmless, and I write you a check and figure out what does that look like, and you can bring Lacey into that conversation and take a minute and even figure that out now. I don't want to rush you into that. I want you guys to have a fair time to give you that opportunity.
I appreciate that, and I don't want this to come off as disrespectful, because I don't, again, this is me coming from, I have no idea how this plays. I don't know how this works. Severance is a foreign word to me. I only know it in theory, and the theory I don't get. And so it's something that I want to make sure that I'm, like, if I'm signing something, I want a lawyer to have looked over it. Because, and I'm not saying that you're going to do something or try to pull anything, but my history beyond notched, years, like...
I have no objections to it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I just want, because, like I said, if I wanted to just sue and get a fat check, I would have. I could have, and I didn't, because that is not what I don't know, I don't want to try to take advantage of the company.
Kind of a guy,
and I have been.
The Lord has forced me to be otherwise.
Same here.
I recognize where you're coming from, and I recognize the reason for it. My thought was to write something that essentially says you hold Notched and its employees and myself harmless from past or present or something to that effect. And I was prepared to resolve that now, right? Get a check and move on. But if it makes you more comfortable, we can go that way, and I would have Spencer draft it up and send it to you, or have your guy look at it, and then go from there. At a minimum, when you get your last check, I would like to resolve this fairly quickly so it doesn't leave you hanging, or us. I've never done a severance, so I don't know what they look like. I've never compensated anyone when they're fired or quit or anything like that. So my initial thought is a month's pay is probably a good place to start. So I think it's really reasonable for you guys to have time and figure that out.
Could we?
I'm going to treat you with the same courtesy that I want to be treated.
Can we approach it just because this, like, here's a last check, like this last week, and this, like, the last 5 days and the next 5 are a paycheck, and that's 2 weeks, and I'm already missed 1 week. Can I do my vacation time, my 2 weeks vacation for this week and next week, and then worry about severance or whatever after that?
So typical operation would be at the time of dismissal. You would be paid
up to that point.
Up to date. So you'd be paid through this week.
And that's why
PTO time.
when I switched to
and technically you don't
salary.
2 weeks yet. In our handbook it talks about it being earned through the year. So
right, but I figured there was some leeway since I'd been here 2.5 years. Like, I wasn't salary the whole time, but I've been here and giving it everything.
It's not a rollover thing. The way we have it in there is that it's going to be used within the year.
And that's where I'm like.
So this year you would have a week built up, but in either case, it's at time of dismissal. dock anything for this week. You and I worked this week out. We needed time and we worked it out. We made the accommodations we could on that. Your dismissal has nothing to do with this week or that. It has everything to do with what we've already discussed. So I have to do contact with the accounts and know what that number is, and then I can write a check for paid through today. And then we'll draft a short letter. And probably have a recommended sum or something. That being said, it's sticky, ugly business, but I don't want to leave with hard feelings. Like, we've gone through hard things, and it's built a relationship that I like, and I care about you as a human, and I wish you well. And I know that seems really fake after what in my position I had to do, but I'm still going to say it because I honestly feel it. And that's why I had to take time to step away, because you will leave a hole. A very big one. But if this is just a job, even though we've made it into a relationship in a lot of ways. And I know that you're going to do well, and things will work out, they often do. I don't know how all the dreams are going to come together for us, but I'm sure they'll work out. Things will work out. I still want you, and again, I know this sounds fake, but I honestly care about each individual. I pray for each individual every day of our team, and I consider you a dear friend, and if you ever need anything, to reach out. And if you need a referral, like that's all good. It's really the clash of personalities and those things that I just, you're talking to this stuff. So I appreciate you. I'll try to reach out by Monday with a letter.
Okay.
And like I say, I want to get that resolved quickly so you're not waiting, and I have no intention to draw it out if everyone's feeling good about the direction we're going. I don't want to rush it either. I want you guys to be able to feel like you can move on to greener pastures and not have any remorse. Why don't you take some time to gather your personal items? Leave me keys and phone. Let me go call the accountant. Tell you do that. I'll get that check written for you for at least getting paid up to this point. I believe we're in the middle.
Yeah, it's the middle of the pay period.
So you probably have a deposit coming, and then it will be done, I would guess. But I've got to see where they're at in the actual process. I'll actually know where it's at. Can I give you a hug?
Yeah. I've enjoyed every minute I've been here.
Well, I'm sure wise men have said wise words about times like this. I don't know, but we've definitely grown a lot together. We've been through a lot. I like to think that we're all better for it. I think we are. I definitely feel like I'm a better individual because of you.
I've grown a lot just being here. And like I was telling Lacey when I started, like I told Jeff, like I was just looking at a year, just something, and it was not that, like it was much more, and it's just a bummer.
Things work out the way they do for us. I've always had confidence in that. My parents say that, and I kind of shake my head at it. Then I go through it, and okay, that makes sense. It's all for our learning and for our benefit, and although things are hard, they're needed.
And we have a book club that has pointed all of this out.
It's true.
I have never gotten a card for any of the books, so can I grab those?
Yeah, how many are we at now?
4. There's Mark. Think like I'm looking at them. Think like a month. 7 Habits, Eat the Frog, and Good to Great is where we were. And I have all those books. They're my Audible. Lacey's listening to 7 Habits again. Like,
Nice.
it's there's a lot in that book that it's just like.
It's empowering to know that we can change our reality. We can. Doesn't matter where we've been, where we grew up. That was kind of the message I got from that. So there's principles that if we discovered those principles, we can build our lives on them. We can step on, using the stepping stones.
There's not every like with install and fabrication. There's not a mess up. It's a learning. It's a how not to do something if it's a mess up, and if or how to do something a little bit better because of the mess up. Like growth always. Growth mindset.
So can I talk to you just as a friend?
Yeah.
With your abilities as drafting, you don't have AutoCAD stuff, but your ability in SketchUp is significant. There's no reason you couldn't do like a little course on AutoCAD, take a couple weeks off and do that, and then be able to go to any builder like Ezra Lee. He did fantastic work. I interviewed a guy that was a draftsman for him, and you're clearly a better guy. He was there, I don't know how long, but they're a general contracting company, they're kind of big and they're this and that. Consider something like that. I don't know. Obviously, you guys figure out that if I was in your shoes, that's what I would do. I would seek out maybe a little certification or a little training, and then get into that with your background and framing. Some of those guys just work under architects. They're just draftsmen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a client handler. They're not anything. They're just like the architects, the guy with the degree and the stamp, and draftsmen are kind of busy with this. But you have to work under an architect for so many years, and then you can take the exam and become an architect if you want. But maybe you don't even want to do that because they take the stress off, so they carry the liability. You get to do a lot of drafting, and it's kind of neat.
My grandpa was an architect, so it was like it's not something I ever considered, but I didn't think I would be a designer either. And what I do with SketchUp is I didn't even imagine.
I couldn't have foreseen this last year unless I was a prophet. It was like where we went was a neat thing, and it was hard, but it was a neat thing. And I told you this before, I can't remember his name, short time guy. So I kind of want to give Colton a shot. Well, Colton didn't plan on being there. That's how life is. Like, sometimes the best and the worst parts of life you don't plan.
You always grow from them.
Anyways, think about it. I think it could be a really great fresh start for you. And you could be. Some of these guys I was interviewing have AutoCAD, they're just draftsmen, they're not architects. They can win with it. And in particular was doing quite well. But he was carrying a hefty role as well, like a project management over a design team. It was kind of a big function, but I was like, so if we're looking for another designer, where are you at? He's like, well, this is how much I was getting paid before. I was like, okay, well, not quite where we're at. So much so that like he's taken like a year off, and his wife works.
Yeah.
Since the company goes. So anyways, that could be a neat opportunity for you. I'm married to this.
Mm-hmm.
And my future's this, but I've considered, like, had I gone a different route, could be making more in kind of a, like even the work from home, the freelance stuff. I would do this weekend. Hop on to freelance.com, sign up as a freelancer for Google Schedule. And then what you do is you get notifications when people have a Google Schedule project. You make a bid, and you try to sell yourself as a service, and then they accept it, and you give them